Okay, welcome to A3 low and mid training. I'll be your trainer, Kristi. Some people are still coming in. Sorry, let me let them in. And let me share my screen as well. Okay, can everyone see? You can just give me a thumbs up. All right.
Yep.
Okay, welcome to the new to program workshop for A3 low and mid. Um, let's get started. So A3 low levels are A3 is a day two class, which means it's a project-based learning class. That means the students will be doing their projects like normal. If you just taught C2, it's like similar. Um, the low levels are Mega through Terra, so Mega, Giga, and Terra. Some class materials that you will be using. We have the storybooks, which you can see on the right side of the screen here, two examples. And then also you can see the titles in this graph. We also have something called chunk books, which is like a homework book for the students. And last of all, the smart textbook, which you're all familiar with as well. Okay, so to go over some course objectives initially, um, like we said, this is a project-based learning class, but they use the storybooks with like a short story every week to sort of evaluate the information and apply it through their own ideas and speaking, uh, and then eventually into a project. So, yes. Okay, here is the class structure. You can see it's our normal 3 hours of class. Uh, One thing to note, teachers should complete a homework check during the administrative component. At the beginning here, we have about 15 minutes to do this. So on top of like taking attendance and doing your tab test and everything that you normally do in class, you should also check their homework, and that's in the chunk books that I mentioned earlier. um, you need to check both for completion and comprehension. So one, make sure that they finished everything, and two, also make sure you're checking for their grammar and spelling and all of that good stuff. Uh, if you notice that there are some questions that there are a lot of students are missing, then you can feel free to go over that in class as well. And also at the beginning of the third hour, teachers need to complete some iLearning handouts at the beginning so that, I mean, they're like correlated to the project itself. So it's pretty seamless as it blends into that third hour. And I'll go over that a little bit more later on. Okay, so this is the chunk book that I've been referring to. All the selected examples from this presentation will be from the Giga level. So A3 is a homework intensive class, and students need to complete about 10 pages of homework out of their Words to Chunks book, or we often refer to them as chunk books. There are a variety of activities in them, and during the first class, teachers should explain in detail like how to complete each page of the chunk book. Some of the directions aren't that intuitive, so it would be useful for you to go over each activity, like maybe even do one or two in class, like the first week, to make sure the students know exactly what they're doing when they get home. Um, yeah, so this is what the book looks like on the cover. Okay, so the first two pages, you can see on the left side here, there's a vocabulary list. The vocabulary word is the one that you see bolded in green. And then there's a definition on the right side of that page. And then also on the right page, there are two activities. One is definition, pretty straightforward. You just match the definition to the vocabulary word provided. And then words in context, you need to use the context of the sentence to determine which word goes into the blank. It could be useful here to sort of help students find like keywords in these questions to identify some like clues to help them know which words go in there. Okay, give me one moment. I just want to check and make sure there isn't anyone waiting in the waiting room. No. Okay. Okay. On the next page, again, we have a vocabulary list. Again, those words in green bold are the vocabulary words. And then on the right side, we have two activities. One of them is the synonym activity. This one might be a little confusing for your students, so please make sure to explain this one. They need to see what the bolded word here is I can point it out for you. So this is the bolded word here, frustrated. Then they need to find what the synonym of frustrated is. Um, these passages are from the reading itself, so they can use the context here to determine what the correct synonym is. Also, it could be helpful if your students are like very low level, maybe they don't know what a synonym is. So maybe in just like the first couple of weeks or so, you can just remind them like, what does a synonym mean? It's like words that mean the same thing. And they should just like write that in their workbook to just have as reference for later, maybe if they don't remember what that means. Okay. Then the second activity is just the collocation activity. So students need to predict what the correct word is that goes in that blank. Okay. Next, we have 2 pages of activities here. On the left side, we have word families. So on both of these pages, actually, all of the words have the Korean definition next to them. So that should be helpful for the students. And the the activities here, I would say sometimes the students struggle with a little bit more. It could be pretty useful to have some media cards or like remediation materials prepared for this activity just to help the students understand like the meaning of the idioms a little better. It would be useful to have something to illustrate in another way, maybe to help students understand what this idiom means. So on the left side, we have word families. You need to use the vocabulary word in different contexts. So you can see here the word is compare, but we also have like comparison, comparable, same root word here. And then in the green, we have the word in different contexts as well. So they need to use these words in the context of the sentences for the activity. And then same thing for down below for serious. And then on the right side, we have word choice. Again, it has the Korean next to it, so it should be helpful for the students, and it's just to fill in the blank. And then lastly, particularly with idioms, I think you should have something prepared for the students to help illustrate what the idiom actually is. Although it does have it next to there in Korean, like I said, just putting it in a sentence maybe might not help the students understand the idiom so much. So maybe have something else prepared for that. Okay, I will stop and take some questions so far if anyone has any questions about the chunk books. Don't think I see any hands.
I've got a
Okay.
question.
Oh,
So
yes,
are
Joshua.
these aren't online, these are like physical books that we're going through with
Yes, they're
them?
physical books.
Okay,
So you'll need to be checking these books at the beginning of the class period. Yeah.
gotcha.
And I know like at Sacho branch, usually we have like the Korean like teachers also helping to sort of check, but that might not be the case at your branch. So I would definitely ask your BM or your FM.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. And also apologies if for my voice. I'm a little bit sick, so okay. So we're on to the class evaluation. This is the same as this term. Um, we just give grades every 3, 6, 9, and 12 weeks, and you should input those grades through MERP. And on the right side, you can just see like the breakdown of the learning points. Okay, so moving on to the smart textbook. This is the teacher's portal online, your portion, you can see there's the media card button. So this is what you all will be looking at. So this is the first page of the lesson. Um, This is the vocabulary and speaking page, and we start with a word map. You can see there's like a picture in the middle, and then there are three words floating around it. They always give you an example of the first word. Like, for example, the first picture says first prize, and usually I will try to get the students to start talking about this topic, right? So you can ask some leading questions like, who do you think the man in the middle of this picture is? Or what does that say on the board? Or what is that girl thinking about? And try to get the students talking a little bit more about the topic. You can also personalize the questions, ask them like, have you ever won first prize? Or have you ever, struggled to come up with a good idea? Then they'll start thinking. You should use this page to generate some conversation and some interest in the topic here. And then also at the bottom, there's a prediction question that can help with this as well, a discussion question. And feel free to insert media cards here as you see fit as well. Okay, on to the next page of the Smart Textbook. This is the words and context page. You do this before you do the reading. So this is to help the students like preview some perhaps difficult vocabulary so that they know what they're reading about and understand it like as they're reading. So again, in the green boxes, these are directly from the passage, so they'll see them in this context again later. Um, Yes, so you can see the vocabulary words that correlate to the questions are bolded in the reading, and you should go over these words using media cards. You can use example sentences or elicit examples or any other way that your teaching style sees fit to get these students to understand the the meaning of the words. If you want to take it a step further, even, you could have the students use the vocabulary word or the target word into like their own sentence. They can like write their own sentence. At this point, I know some branches request their students to bring like their own personal like notebook because they don't have like a workbook in this class per se, but we don't do that at my branch. It could be a good idea for consistency's sake. I think I would leave that up to you and your branch, though. Okay, at this point, we will do the in-class reading. So everyone needs to have their storybooks. So they should bring two books to class every week. It should be their storybook and their chunk books. Uh, okay, so as you can see, on the very left side here, I just have all of my students number every single line on the page. So it ends at 14 here. And the next page, at the top of the page, it should start with 1 again. This is just so that if like one student is explaining about like where they found an answer or like justifying their answer to a reading comprehension question, like later on, if there are students who are lost, I can just say like, oh, let's say Jared, he's looking at page 4, line 11. Okay, then we will all know where to look in the book. And I don't have to run around trying to like point out exactly where in the storybook the answer is to all the students who are confused. Um, yeah, this also helps students keep on track and then stay engaged in class so that they don't feel so lost. I utilize similar markings to what I use in like my C1 class. So you can see I like circle some transition words, put a box around like the topic and such. This way there's some consistency between the C1 class and the C and then like the next semester. Um, Also, this way, later on, if there are some questions about like plot points or key information from the story, it's easy for the students to see, like, where can I find this information? Oh, it must be around, this part of the story. I see a lot of markings. This must be pretty important. At this point, there are some reading comprehension questions later on, and you may find this helpful during your prep to focus on specific parts of the reading that will appear later in those comprehension questions. You can ask students some leading questions about those comprehension questions or any other methods that you see fit. And then make sure to adjust the amount of time based on the student's level and the lesson. So at the beginning of the semester, maybe you're holding their hand a little bit more. It's a lot more like showing them how to do things. And then as the semester progresses, maybe try to let go a little bit more independent work, try to get the students to um, like get into a flow and to know like how the class is going to proceed in the following weeks. So normally I start this part of the class by asking students to read. You can cold call on them. You can do like popcorn reading. Um, Depending on the level, I'll just do like one or two paragraphs. Maybe if they're like a little higher, maybe like half a page. And that's really up to you. And then starting on the third page, I would transition to some independent reading. And at this time, just like we have been annotating here, I also ask the students to annotate in their storybooks. Excuse me. And while the students are doing this independently, teachers should also proctor and walk around and check and make sure that all the students um, are comprehending the reading and selecting the appropriate like key information from the story for the reading comprehension questions later. Okay, moving on to the reading and speaking page. The first activity here is called scanning. These are the reading comprehension questions. So you should help the students find some keywords to help identify like the answers from the text. Hopefully they've already marked them with their annotations. And this is where it becomes really useful for the students to have marked like the numbers of the lines on each page. Because if students are particularly slow at typing, which sometimes the lower level students can be, teachers may ask the students to just like type the name, sorry, the number of the page and then the line number in the tablet. And then they can just like write the number of the question in the workbook for reference. So they can like go back and forth and see where the answer is in the reading. Um, okay, yeah. And like I said, you can use these questions to sort of lead discussion during the reading as well. And this page, students can work independently or with groups. That's really up to you as well and up to your teaching style. Okay, on to the listening and reading and speaking page of the Smart Textbook. The first activity is called retelling. So you can see there's like a CD icon here. Or excuse me. There's like a CD icon here. I don't know if you can tell if that's a CD, but you should use it to play the audio file. So if you click it, then the audio file will pop up. Especially with lower levels, don't be afraid to play it multiple times if necessary. This is just like a standard fill in the blank kind of activity. Okay, afterwards, there is a recording activity. This might be different based on your branch. Uh, the record button is here. And then also, if the students record on their tablets, you can play it back on your teacher tab if you'd like to have that option. So the students should record themselves reading a paraphrased sentence to summarize the paragraph. So after they have filled in all the blanks in this CD paragraph, then they need to paraphrase this paragraph into like basically two sentences. So they give you the first one, and then the second one, they need to think of themselves. Earlier on in the semester, especially with the lower levels, it could be difficult for students to understand like what paraphrasing is. So make sure you explain that clearly in detail. And then also, it could be hard to digest, right? So it's like a whole paragraph. If you feel like it's necessary, I would use just like maybe one sentence and practice paraphrasing that one sentence with their students. And then as the semester progresses, maybe they can get to the point where they can paraphrase the entire paragraph. I know there are a couple of these. There's not just like one. I think there are two or three on this page. So that's something to consider as well. Okay. And then we come to the summary writing page. So students need to choose the most important information from this part of the story. So this is basically the entire story summarized into 8 sentences. So you can see this one is has blanks at number 2 and number 8. I sort of guide my students. I ask them like, oh, this is at number 8. Which part of the story do you think it is in? Is it the beginning or the middle or the end? And hopefully they can tell you, I should look at the end of the story. So students should refer to their storybooks and you can guide them in this way. If they're a little bit, even lower in level, you might just tell them like sort of what page or what region of a page to look at. There isn't really a right or wrong answer here. As long as the students can justify it to you, it should be like the important information. So if they're telling you like some minor details, then you should let them know. And the smart textbook will give you a guide of like sort of what information they're looking for. But I think as long as the students can justify to you why this information is important, then they can have a correct answer. Okay, at the bottom of this page, there is another sort of paraphrasing skill activity. They need to eliminate parts of the sentence that are less important. So, um, you can adjust this activity according to your student's level, again, maybe towards the beginning of the semester, or maybe if you're a megas teacher as opposed to like a Terra teacher, this might look a little bit different for you. But students should practice eliminating, like identifying which parts are less important. If you're like a lower level teacher, maybe you can practice just like one sentence, or like you could even come up with your own examples that aren't from the story. I think as long as you're practicing the skill, it's definitely okay. Okay, and then the last part of this writing page, it's a fill in the blank with proper transitions. To some of your students, this might be the first time that they've been exposed to like the concept of transition words, how they connect ideas or they glue ideas together. So it's good to have some media cards to demonstrate the transitions, especially the ones that will be showing up in the activity. Um, I know that at our branch, at the Sato branch, we have like a list of transition words that we give to the students like semesterly, and they're organized by like what kinds of transitions they are. So like, for example, they could be a contrasting, like however is a contrasting transition, or like a time transition, like later is a time transition. So uh, that that's definitely a resource that I refer to a lot in my classes. I'm not sure about other branches, but uh, I would even maybe do a lesson like the first week about some transitions before I do like this activity. So after identifying sort of like which transition words or what kinds of transition words these transition words are, then I think it would be easier for the students to determine like which one should go in this blank. Like if these are the two ideas that are being connected, then what kind of relationship do they have to each other? Otherwise, if they're like really low levels, again, you might just use the media cards to show like a more digestible example of some transitions. And maybe you can have students just like make some sentences using the transitions in this activity instead of like doing the activity itself. Um, I think that as long as you're practicing the skill, it's okay. You don't have to do it exactly the way that it's in the smart textbook. Okay. And then this is an actual paraphrasing activity. So again, in the first few weeks, teachers need to guide the students. It might be the first time that they've been exposed to like paraphrasing. So please make sure to explain in detail again, what is paraphrasing? Teachers can do this with an activity, or they can even modulate this existing activity to practice the paraphrasing skills. or even come up with an even simpler example for the students. So, for example, like if we are paraphrasing, we don't want to add something, we don't want to subtract anything, and we also don't want to change the meaning of anything. So, these are some things that the students can be thinking about as they're practicing their paraphrasing skills. Specifically, this activity, I just did the first one for you all so you can see. The bolded words in green, they want you to replace some part of this, um, how do I say it? Some part of this phrase or chunk with the word that's in parentheses at the end. So, for example, the first sentence is Janice Anderson wanted to take first place at the science fair, but we need to incorporate win somehow into the sentence and paraphrase it in our own words. So then this would change to Janice Anderson wanted to win first place at the science fair. So this is how this activity works, but I feel a little bit like it's lacking in like the actual paraphrasing skill. So feel free to modulate that as you see fit. Oh, okay, and then the last writing activity in the Smart textbook is the writing page. The only directions say summarize the passage. So that could be pretty daunting, I think, for the students. You can, again, modulate this activity to your own students' level. So maybe at this point, you can also incorporate sort of a mini lesson on summary writing tips. So, for example, maybe you help them eliminate less important parts and have them justify their answers back to you. Maybe that's like one mini lesson the first week. Maybe the next week you can practice connecting sentences with those appropriate transition words that we just learned about and making sure that the transition words are related to the relationships between those sentences. And then lastly, maybe we can practice like paraphrasing those sentences and phrases and then altogether, hopefully at the end of the semester, they will be able to like summarize the entire writing or the passage itself. Also, this is why it's helpful for the students to have their annotations in their storybooks. They can refer back to them and find sort of like, oh, what were the main ideas of this part of the story? What are the important details that I should include in my summary? Okay. Okay, does anyone have any questions so far about the SMART textbook? Okay. Okay, moving on. So like I said, at the top of the third hour, you'll need to do this iLearning handout. It's topical speaking every odd week, and then it's short essay writing every even week. It's really similar to, you've probably seen it in like the C1 and C2 workbooks. So it's just like a prompt will be given, and then students need to give either two reasons and details to support those reasons when they're speaking or in their writing. So early on in the semester at this point, make sure that you discuss like the writing structure and like how they need to have a clear opinion, two strong reasons with transition words and some supporting details. Okay, so we are moving on to the project portion of the lesson. Students should read the topic at the top of the page. So here it's influence, and teachers should ask some leading questions to review like the cause and effect. So here it's like the influence is causing the feeling in the story. Um, what I like to sort of do is combine this page with the next page, which is like the actual project page, and use um, this topic in the project. So, for example, like this project is about a product and what are some problems with that product. So, if I want to incorporate this topic into that project idea, maybe I'll make a project about a problem in a product that causes a feeling in like a character of choice for the student. And then maybe how does that character improve the product and their feelings later on? And that way they're sort of both incorporated into the project itself. Okay, here, some branches may choose to allow the teachers to independently create their own projects. I know that's the case at my branch, but I would definitely make sure to ask your FM or your BM as like this is branch specific. It may be the case that they just ask you to use the project in the book, in which case the directions are pretty simple and laid out, and you can just follow them through. Make sure that during project time, you're proctoring as always, not only to make sure that the students are staying on task, but to also gauge like the timing of your projects. Make sure that your students will have plenty of time to present as well as hopefully practice their presentation before they give it. Um, I find it's really helpful to use timers during my project time, and I will just like call them out like, we have 30 minutes left, we have 15 minutes left, 10 minutes left. That way, the students aren't sort of taken by surprise when their project time is over and they still have like 20% of their project to do, right? So as you're announcing the times, they're also thinking like, oh, what can I accomplish in this time? Like realistically, how much time do I need to finish this part of my project? I think that's also an important skill that we teach during project-based learning. Afterwards, when students are giving presentations, just like in C2, please make sure that the students are giving their presentations with good presentation skills. So, they should have loud, clear voices, trying to make some good eye contact. They're not, dancing and laughing up there. They're like serious about their presentations. All of our students work very hard on their projects. So just make sure that all the other students are paying attention as well. And one way I like to make sure my other students are paying attention is I ask them to give feedback to their peers. So I know that they'll be paying attention because they need to be able to tell the presenters feedback like, oh, how can they improve their presentation next time? Or I thought this was really good in your presentation. Um, yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about A3 low levels so far? Okay, looks good. Okay, on to A3 mid-levels. So this will be bridge through birdie, so bridge, par, and birdie. Um, okay, so the course objectives are very similar. So we're using some text to understand, analyze, and evaluate the information. We want to generate some thoughts and ideas. So they need to be speaking a lot in this class and sharing their own thoughts. And then also they would we need them to communicate their thoughts and ideas like through their project or their writing. So very similar to A3 low. Okay, so some class materials. They have a physical they have like a physical workbook, I believe, and they will be discussing a different topic each week. This is really similar to C1 actually. You can see um, there's like a different topic each week. Some of them like cyberbullying, um, yeah, so they will cover a different topic each week. And then also each week you will need to go over a different reading strategy. So similarly also to A2, we'll be talking about some reading strategies. You can see here on this page, the reading strategy this week is like skill theory. So it's like finding the topic, main idea, and supporting details in a reading. And you can see it's very similar to like our Cheongdam pizza, right? So this is a skill that's very transferable from this semester to next semester. Okay, so again, the class structure, it's very similar, except you can see some of these components are marked with P and some of them are marked with S. So P refers to the components with the paper book. The students will have a paper book. And then S refers to the smart textbook that we have. So I'll talk about later how you can sort of implement both of them into your class. Okay, and again, the class evaluation is the same. Um, you need to input grades weeks 3, 6, 9, and 12. So please make sure that you're taking notes on your students' academic progress and grading them accordingly. Okay, so like I briefly talked about earlier, this is the skill theory page. As you can see, it's very similar to the Cheongdam pizza. So I actually use the same source of markings that I use in my annotations for C1 in this class. So you might see topic, then I would draw a box around it because that's how I've been doing it in my C1 class. And hopefully it's sort of like universal throughout your branch so that even if they get like a different teacher the next semester, the markings are still the same, something that they can recognize. So again, we can see it's very similar to the Cheongdam pizza that we've been teaching this semester that we all know and love. Okay, and moving on to the skill practice page, you can see again, these are being marked very similarly to how we mark in C1, right? So we've boxed the topic here, cyberbullying. We circled some transition words. However, because, in addition, right? So hopefully these skills transfer from this semester into next semester, and this will be like pretty easy for the students to do. You can treat this pretty similarly to C1 as well by using like WH questions about the thesis to elicit the main ideas or using WH questions about the main ideas to elicit major details. And again, you can think of these like with your students. This will help them justify their answers to you as well. Another thing that I'd like to mention, you can see the entire reading here is just like one paragraph. I actually find this useful because a lot of students can get into the pattern of being like, teacher, the thesis is the last sentence of the first paragraph. Whereas here, it's all one paragraph. So if they are relying on these sorts of tactics to like find the thesis or the main ideas, then this sort of forces them to actually use the skills of like which WH question should I use to find the main ideas? Um, so yeah, I think this is a good practice for that skill. Okay, so you can see the smart textbook is on the left side and then the paper textbook is on the right side. The paper textbook is what the students will have, and then the smart textbook on the left side here is what the teachers will have. So if you have scans at your branch of the paper textbook, I would actually recommend maybe pulling this up on your TV as well and annotating along with the students that way they can have like visual confirmation of their understanding as well. So you can annotate along with the students, like similarly to the skim page in C1 for the mid levels. Yeah. The smart textbook basically just organizes the information for you in this like chart, but it's like the same as far as I'm aware. Okay, on to the reading comprehension questions. This is very similar to A2. The teachers are running through like the reading question strategies like in the same way as A2. So teachers may use this page to like review maybe skills that they've already learned in A2 this week. If you have like one level for A2 and A3, that could be useful for you knowing like which skills they learned this week. If not, you can always just check out the Smart textbook and see what they learned this week. Um, so yeah, you can help them identify like what kind of question type is this, or like uh, what are the keywords in this question, and then these kinds of clues can help the students identify what the correct answers are. You can elect to focus on just like one or two question types each week, and then sort of practice those questions from the comprehension page in more detail, in more depth, or you can just do all of them, but sort of talk about the ones that students struggle with a little bit more. Um, so just adjust that according to the level of your students and how their like test taking sort of comprehension skills are at that point in the semester. Okay, I included this slide. I actually don't know if this is in the smart textbook anymore, but in case your branch decides to implement this, I'll talk about it. There's a post-reading page. So after the reading, teachers will focus on some kind of like summary skills. So for this week, this is like a paraphrasing skill. Um, so like I said, we can teach these skills in like the same way as A3 low. So like don't add information, don't omit information, and don't change any information. But then if since these are sort of like higher levels, you can also add some focus on like structure, maybe synonyms and some verbs so that their paraphrasing skills can be a little more advanced. Um, I recommend having some extra remedial like materials on hand to explain the skills, maybe in a simpler way. Again, it might be like the first time they're seeing this at the beginning of the semester. So it would be um, it would be good to have something on hand just in case like the textbook isn't cutting it, and so you need to explain something in like a little bit of a simpler way to the students who are struggling a little bit to apply the skill. Okay, so moving on to the CTP or the critical thinking project. These are topic-based projects, so they are to be completed in like the last half hour of class. So a half hour for a project is like pretty short. Um, and in A2, they've been like drilling all of these reading comprehension, test taking skills. And then again in A3, we're drilling these skills. So it's really important to like make sure that the project is really fun and engaging for the students. Um, Teachers can follow the same like epic process. So empathize, personalize, imagine, and create that you follow. But the steps are pretty straightforward in the project pages as well. You can just follow them. Um, Again, I don't know if this is true for other branches, but you can check with your BM or your FM if they allow teachers to independently create their own projects, then feel free to think of something more engaging for your students and personalize those projects. Okay, so this is the end of my training session. Does anyone have any other questions, comments, or concerns? I've also left my email at the bottom here. Okay. Uh, I have a quick survey for you all to take. Let me just pull it up for you. Thank you so much for coming to my training session. Um, okay, so if you all just take this survey for me, then you will be free to go. Again, my email, I'll send it here in the chat. If anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. Okay, and then whenever you finish that survey, you're free to go.